All right, everybody, let's go ahead and start with this week's broad market analysis. Today is the 16th. We'll be covering futures for tonight as well at the end of this session. But we are covering the week of the 16th of April to the 21st. We'll get started here with one of my favorites to use. This is free information off of Twitter Earnings Whisperers. And we are going to take a look at some of my favorite names. And those favorite names, and I'm just going to outline them here, is Charles Schwab. And then we'll be looking at Bank of America, BAC. Back that truck up because it's one of my favorite stocks to trade. And we'll be looking to see if we can get a piece of that action this week, preferably before or after. We'll see how it sets up on our levels. J&J had a great trade there this year, 5,000% on that trade just a couple weeks ago. Goldman Sachs, obviously, that's a big deal. Lockheed Martin, moving on down, and again, I may miss something, so I apologize. Intuitive, I'm interested. Netflix for sure. Tesla, big name reporting on Wednesday after the close. IBM, always one of those big ones. Morgan Stanley, Alcoa, Discover Card, and moving over into Thursday, looking at American Express, AT&T, and let's see, DR Horton. I'm just naming off some names that I'm familiar with. Union Pacific and P&G on Friday. So overall, what does this mean? For me, I'm interested in what names are actually going to move the market, and it's hard to say. And one of the notes that I made towards the end of my broad market analysis, and I'll repeat it right here, is there's always some sort of decoy. Like there's always this name that kind of starts the earnings season off, and it throws you for a loop, or it throws a lot of retail traders for a loop. And one of the most recent examples I can remember was when Snap, a couple quarters ago, basically snapped in half, went to the downside, and the whole market, followed its whole play to the downside and aftermarket. And really, it was just an opportunity to buy. And I kept telling you folks, hey guys, this is like a decoy. Like we, as a market, I don't think that the market really cares what Snap did. Sure, in the sector, you might see some rotation out of that, but the market as a whole is not going to move just off of one stock, guys. So don't let that decoy mess you up, and we'll be looking for it this week, okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on. We'll go into the next section that we'll be looking at is going to be our market watch, okay? And in market watch, what I want to be looking at um, is, what is on the agenda for this week? Is there anything that, is important? So when we take a look here, we can see that Monday we have Home Builder Confidence Index, Richmond, Fed speaker coming up, Barkin. So that could definitely spark a little bit of volatility in the market. That's at 12:45 Eastern time, and again right here. And then Tuesday, April the 18th, housing starts, building permits, and then you have another Fed head talking at 1 o'clock Eastern. And on Wednesday, we had the Fed Beige Book and New York Fed President Williams speak. So already you're starting to get that feeling that not only are we coming into earnings season, but every day they have somebody lined up to speak Monday through Wednesday. Let's go ahead and take a look at Thursday and Friday. So initial jobless claims, continuing jobless claims, Fed manufacturing survey, existing home sales, Fed Governor Christopher Waller speaking at 12 Eastern. You guys get the point. A lot of people speaking. For me, it's just noise. Let's look at the overall trend, and we'll talk about supply and demand here in a few minutes, and we'll get right into that. And then ending the week on Friday, you have S&P Flash U.S. Services PMI, and then towards the what actually after the market closes, we have Lisa Cook speaking. All right, next thing on the agenda here is to go over last week's neutral strategy. Neutral strategy that can be found on the YouTube page, my YouTube page, and it'll tell you how I teach and trade around this. But the idea is this is for traders who can't be in front of their charts all day, but basically on a break above, you can be aggressive on a break or above and look to go long, or you wait for a close to be a little bit more conservative. Entity 1, Entity 2, Entity 3. Each one of these you could trim and trail those stops. And if we were to break down below the red, we'd end up going short. Notice we did not break or close down below this at 406.07. I mean, it did touch this level, but if you remember, if we go back to last week's broad market analysis, I specifically said let's be looking to buy down here for that move to the upside. QQQ, same thing, folks. Sure, it did. It gave you a lot of attempts here to try and trade this thing to the upside, but ended up just closing into the neutral. The better trade this week was, this was basically off kilter, right? We had the SPY moving out of the neutral to hit targets, and we had the Qs pulling back to get ready for big tech earnings. And if you notice, they did hit T1 and T2. But if you look left and go back to last week's broad market analysis, I specifically said this is where I'd be looking at buying for the upside going into earnings. Let's go ahead and go into our next chart. And this is going to be this week. Okay, so this is SPY. I'm not going to go, big time into this. These are the levels I want you to take note of. Above 414.82, we could see 416.48, 418.44, and so forth. And then to the downside, same thing because we're going into earnings. I wouldn't expect like a big pullback. So I'm still looking to buy the dip, but they need to be at the most crucial areas and where I'm looking for demand. So in this case, 407.56, 409.98, 404.94, 402.11. These are all areas where I'd expect buyers to come in. I wouldn't be too concerned about a deep dip unless it starts to close underneath this 405. Okay, that's me for the SPY. Please take note of the levels here, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Next one that we're going to look at are the Qs. And again, this is your neutral strategy for this week, folks. And you can see the levels here. Same thing. Remember, when we're pushing to the upside, we're looking at trimming on these targets and pulling stops up. And if for some reason you want to go short, same thing, shorting into these targets and pulling stops down. But once again, I would expect buyers to come in between 315 and 313. If we start to close under the 312 level, then I'd be concerned that we're maybe headed right into this level here. But again, day to day, we'll be coaching you and looking at the roadmap for this week coming. Next one, I want to go over the SPY, the bigger picture. So the first thing we're going to look at is going to be the weekly on SPY. So let's go ahead and go over that. The weekly is an inside and up formation. I have circled that for you. And you can see that it pushed into our automated supply level. And a matter of fact, we've hit this level 1, 2, 3 levels just to show you the proof of concept with these levels that I'm teaching you, that this is resistance until proven otherwise. We need at least a weekly close above there. Notice we have been unable to do this almost the entire time. Okay. Now, the next thing, if we continue to push up here, I believe we're looking for that weekly fill that came from the 15th August weekly candle right here. So we have a little gap fill here that we should be looking to fill. And that is, let's see here, that level is roughly around 422. And as long as the inside and up stays intact, again, I'm looking for at least that 422 level. Next chart I'm going to show you is the monthly using the SPY. Okay, so rounding out, nice rounding bottom here. You can see we are supported by the cloud on the monthly. This is our EMA cloud, the 913 and 22. I'm looking to ride this to the upside as long as you can hold that. Again, this is a monthly look at the SPY. Nearing resistance, but the 23.6 or 424 looks like a target as of right now as long as price stays above that cloud. Second yellow bar on the TTM histogram. These are just the notes that I want you to take away from that. And when I say we're entering and getting close to resistance, again, these top and wicks kind of give you a story that the bears are in charge in this area. Okay, so again, a little bit of sideways action until we can break above there. That's the bigger picture. And then we could head into the quarterly supply zone around 446 later in the year. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and follow up with our next charts. And we are going to go into the QQQ. And this is going to be your weekly chart here on the Qs. A little bit different. This is not an inside and up formation. This is a double inside. And just to show you really quick, this is your initial candle right here. This guy right there. And then these two candles have closed inside the body of that initial candle. Therefore, it is a double inside. Okay. Double inside, and bulls need about 329, which is going to be right in this level. So you noticed on the SPY, we came up here and we rejected. Same thing, folks. I'd be expecting a rejection up around that area. So if for some reason tech does lead us in that way, say Tesla and some of the other bigger names that are going to be reporting, if they could push us up there, I would just be cautious as we hit that blue line. But that would be the target to the upside for bulls. Next chart that I want to show you is the monthly. And so far, the monthly is inside. That's really all my notes. I mean, we have support. We have a rounding bottom. We've been talking about this. We've hit the targets that we wanted to, which are right here. Just know that this inside candle does not go up until it starts to push above about 331 or so. Then I would have my eyes open for a nice rally in the tech into QQQ. Okay. All right, so the next chart that I want to show you is the dollar. Let's go ahead and go over that. All right, guys, so this is important, at least for me it is, and I love pattern recognition and just kind of noticing little things like this. The first thing that I see is a bunch of red candles, and this is a weekly chart. This is the same blueprint that we've been using for a very long time. I feel like it's been at least a half a year, but it's been working really, really well for us. We've been able to really call the market in its direction by watching this chart. It's just another tool that really helps us. With the dollar, it's 5 weeks down. That's how many red candles that consistently close down. Okay, so far. This has not happened, and I just went back and looked, and if for some reason I missed something, you're more than welcome to tell me, but I have not seen this happen since June 2020. Okay, this is also the second time it's tested the demand zone down here. Notice that I have this big green box that we've had here for quite some time, and we had this support level. So I should say it's the second time that we tested the support level. Okay, big deal here. It's showtime for the dollar. Either it's going to really push to the upside here or it breaks down, and I believe we could hit 99.98, where we could see this little bit of structure over here give it support. And if the dollar continues to drop, we could see the market continue to move to the upside. So again, your line in the sand for this week, I'm going to have to say, is going to be this pivot low. If for some reason the dollar starts going underneath that pivot low there, and as long as it turns into resistance, again, we could see this move down towards here. And I think this would be like that indicator if the market's really pushing up and the fear of greed index goes from greedy to extremely greedy. This would be that area I'd be cautious on. Now, I will say, because we're at support, guys, I am giving it a yellow flag on your longs. And I'm just saying, hey, be cautious. Just know that the dollar is at support for the second time, and it has not been down 5 weeks in a row since 2020. Is very uncommon, so there could be some sort of relief bounce in here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next one. That's going to be the TNX, and we did get a little bit of a bounce. We kind of stalled right here around resistance last week. My expectation is that over time, the TNX will come right back down, possibly into the 3 to 2.9 level. But since we're just kind of hanging out here at the upside, these are my notes. A small snap up, but not worried unless we close over 3.65 this week or next week. All right, so that 3.65 is kind of like that line in the sand for me this week. If we start breaking down again, get underneath 3.4, then I believe my probabilities increase to the downside, where I could see 3.2, little bounce there, and then over time 2.9. Okay. Next thing I want to be showing you is the skew. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So on a weekly chart, you can see that the skew is around 134.65. This equals protect or risk off. So the last several charts that I just showed you, in theory, when I combine these and look at supply and demand, so looking at the SPYs and the Qs, okay, or the NASDAQ and the ES futures, we're actually in supply zones or at those resistance levels that I showed you. And the dollar, the TNX, and the skew is telling me, hey, John, don't get too far ahead of your skis, okay? Be cautious and just know that this could be, a time where we're going to see some chop, and we really need to see some results before something big happens, okay? The next thing that I'm going to show you right now is going to be the fear and greed index. And the fear and greed index is saying greed. And as you guys all know, typically when we're greedy, the majority of participants are now jumping on the call side. But I wouldn't be too concerned. I think there's still room there. I said yellow flags, not red flags. And because of that, there could still be some room for us to reach into this area. But just know when we start to, teeter on both sides of here, you do want to start getting your yellow flags ready and just be cautious. For me, what does that mean? Well, let me go ahead and read to you what that looks like. Overall sentiment. First of all, I'd like to lead with a quote. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. This was said by Walt Disney, and I love that quote, guys, because you know me. If I talk to you long enough, you'll hear me say this over and over. I don't get paid to try and just tell you every day where the market goes. That's part of my coaching. But for me, it's about execution and taking trades, understanding my allocation, understanding my risk, and using proof of concept by taking those trades live with you. Whether I win or lose, my biggest thing is, again, stop talking and let's start doing. Okay. Overall, the ES and the NQ are still in supply as we start to kick off our earnings season. My first thought is how much can we actually move up before getting results from those earnings? And if there's any company worth mentioning that could help the market boost or drop this week. I see many banks reporting, such as Schwab, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, to name a few. Other names that can definitely have an impact are J&J, LMT, Tesla, Netflix, IBM, and PG. An important note that I always notice, there's always one name that uses as the market uses as a decoy. Examples would be Snap, and I gave you that earlier. But come on, guys, we're smarter than that. We use supply and demand, and we use price action, and that's what we'll continue to do. I think this week for me, though, it's about the day to day and not getting too wrapped up in where I think the market is going, but to simply just follow price action around our levels. Stay patient. Let's start the day this week by focusing on few names in the morning. And as always, guys, what we'll do is we'll end up coming over here, all right, and we'll start with our ES futures. So ES futures, why is it so important? Well, this is the roadmap to me trading every single week. So if we're in the red boxes, I'm going to take a little bit of caution, okay? But one thing to note, when we're in supply, it doesn't automatically just mean we go short. There are certain levels to the supply zones that I go into when I'm teaching, okay? And I can tell you right now, as long as 4138 holds, 4137, then I'm happy to continue buying the dip here. For some reason, if we start to close underneath there again, it may be room for some concern. But again, how much concern? We have a long ways to go during this earnings season. Okay. I keep saying earnings season because this is a time where if the market pulls back, I'll see traders like really jump on the buy side of being short. But then when you go back and you go, man, we just chopped around. And then why did we chop around? Because look, there was uncertainty. We don't know what earnings is going to say. And if these guys are forecasting and it sounds bullish, then you just look back and you're like, why did I get so short? Or vice versa. Okay. Why did I get so long? Like we don't know the results. So once again, overall sentiment here, guys, on a weekly standpoint, is just be cautious. We're at our resistance here. We have our support. It's if this, then that. And we'll go with that on our smaller time frames. Let's go over to the daily. Notice that I changed my triggers. And as always, as a disclaimer, guys, although you see these levels, I do teach how to trade that on a smaller time by using the TTM Squeeze Pro. I got my long triggers here. I have my resistance and I have my short trigger. These are new. Please take note. Let's go ahead and move on to the smaller charts here. Um, Although I did say 4 hour in here, this is actually, I use zones looking at, give me 1 second here. I use zones. Let's see, I think it might be on default. There we go. It's on default. So right here, this is what our blueprint looks like for tonight. Okay. So we should be opening up close to resistance. I would expect a little bit of a pullback. I wouldn't get too excited unless these guys gap it over 4190 and then, does resistance become support and so forth. Far as a pullback, if we pull back into and around 4159 to 4153, let's grab those TTM squeezes, look at the histogram on a smaller time frame. And, basically what I teach you guys, we'll be looking for signs down there to get loaded up down here in this support and or demand zone. The demand zone from last week worked really, really well. Matter of fact, on Friday's new blueprint that I gave you, we hit it to the tick. That was a great trade. But this one here, just going back and showing you just how beautiful this has worked so far. And these are kind of weak highs if you ask me. Like after we make a new high, if you notice over this pivot, boom, they flush it. So you got to be careful of that. So please note, even if we hit over 4190, just be on the lookout as we get towards that round number of 4200. Okay. So those are the three charts that I'm looking at on ES, and we'll keep using those until they don't work. And then coming on down here to the NASDAQ, let's go over here as well. And here is, let's go to the week. All right, here's the weekly. We have not changed that. There's no changes, just like the ES. We came up towards supply. We pulled back as expected. This is my support. If we come back down into here, I'll be looking for buyers to show up around 12,867. And again, using that TTM histogram to really help me out there. And for some reason, we break and close below support, then that's a different story. I'll be looking for, 12,050, 12,000, somewhere in there. And again, for some reason, if we came all the way back to this green box, I'd be looking to buy there as well. Okay. Next chart is going to be, and give me 1 second here. The same thing. We have our triggers on here, and disclaimer, I use the TTM squeeze histogram to help me out on my entries. But as far as this is concerned, we got resistance up here around 13,297. Short trigger 13,523. And guys, while this is coming across my head, please don't leave yet. I have something really important towards the end to talk about. So please bear with me after we get done with these NASDAQ charts, okay? And then we have short triggers around 13,523 and trigger longs 13,040 by 12,885. And then as we get over here, same thing, using anything from 30 minutes up to 4 hours. I came up with this blueprint. We have supply around 13,298 by 13,351. We have resistance close to that open, just like ES futures at 13,218 by 13,256. We have a short-term support right here at 13,175. We break that. I'd be looking for buyers around 13,140 by 13,114. All right, so really quick, I gave you guys like a quick run through of my charts, and I think, we have a pretty big following, and I know that you guys are really impressed by what you see when it comes to supply and demand, but I just want to make sure that I leave you with this. The biggest thing about supply and demand is to understand that news is a catalyst that pushes price to one of these levels. I personally do not listen to news. I don't involve it in our trading, and I haven't in since we've been open around 6 or 7 years of time. And for me, that is a big deal. I'm not trying to tell any of you not to watch news, but I want you to understand that it can get inside your head and it can keep you from executing trades. And as I said, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And for me, folks, if you give me this thesis based around news, it just really creates a lot of talking. Have you ever noticed that? Well, if this happened and this person did this, then I could see X, Y, and Z happening. But the truth of the matter is, price action is all you need. You need really sound levels, you need some supply and demand on these charts, and you want to wait for those things to be said. And then we want to wait for our levels. And then we want to sit there and we want to try to line ourselves up with institutions so that we can execute. Before we execute, I'll leave you with this. Make sure you know how much you can lose before you execute a trade. And I go into deep detail on that probably day after day talking about these kind of things. And I just want to make sure you understand that. Before I take a trade, I always know how much I can lose. I'm never going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to blow up my account. If you guys have any questions about this broad market analysis, please reach out to me. But other than that, I can't wait to trade with you guys, and hopefully we'll get some kind of range tonight where we could trade a little bit of futures. And don't forget, make sure you guys join us in the new day trading room over at Simpler. And if you're not getting in there, just let us know. Send us a Discord message, or you can reach out to support on Simpler. I really appreciate you.